All right, folks, welcome back to Talking Soccer. I am your host, Justin Horniker, for today's World Cup Daily. And what I really want to talk about is Canada's 2-1 win over Ireland as they kind of saved their World Cup in this match. And first, before we go into this match, I am extremely gutted for Ireland. Katie McCabe talked about this after the match, and I think she said, "I am heartbroken," on top of just other being proud to be there. It's tough because Ireland were definitely overmatched. They've been overmatched this tournament. I watched a lot of their build-up this year, actually. I was in St. Louis when they played the U.S. team. I've watched probably more of their build-up than I thought I did, honestly. And it was a team that struggled to find goals throughout their kind of lead up to the World Cup. So to see them get their first World Cup goal in a way, which was an Olympico in the fourth minute from Katie McCabe as she sent in their second straight corner. And honestly, Ireland, until they gave up the own goal late in stoppage time, looked to be the stronger team. Now, that's going to lead me into what today's Substack article is about, which is Bev Priestman made some key adjustments going into the second half. And I'll admit I was wrong because I looked at that roster. I saw Christine Sinclair was on the bench. I noted in the last match how that made them not as dynamic as they needed to be. However, against this Ireland squad, I think you needed that veteran presence. And so Christine Sinclair comes in with Sophie Schmidt. Sophie Schmidt ends up, I need to run through this game first before I get too off the cuff. But Sophie Schmidt was also just so pivotal in this match. And you look at the veterans that Canada has, and you are maybe a little bit worried about the next generation, like outside Jordan Huitema. They need more support, honestly. And it's a federation where they haven't had a ton of training camps because of funding issues. They've obviously been at odds with their federation, both the women's, the XNT, and the men's team. It's a federation-wide issue. So there's reason to be concerned about the next generation of Canada soccer. It's obvious that the talent's always there, but will they be able to identify it and get them into camp? Because they are losing dual nationals at an astonishing rate because they aren't putting together youth tournaments, they aren't putting together youth camps and national team camps. So there's reason to be concerned, and I think a negative result here today would put that under a microscope. But Bev Priestman's squad will live to fight another day because they get an own goal at the end of stoppage time, goes into half, and Bev Priestman talked about the need to be brave. And that's a bit of a managerial buzzword. I think the talk of being brave is, a manager's go-to for just getting stuck in and staying with the game plan. So second half comes around, Bev Priestman makes 3 substitutions. Like I said, that's Sophie Schmidt, Christine Sinclair, those big names coming into the midfield. And they change formations and do their more typical 4-2-3-1. It was very successful. Sophie Schmidt out on the wing in the 54th minute. That's what leads to the second Canada goal that allows them to just take control of the game and see out the win. Sophie Schmidt wins a turnover deep in Ireland's territory, deep down the pitch, corrals the ball, controls the ball, sends in just a beautiful weighted lofted ball, and they find a way to go ahead 2-1, and makes you kind of think twice about riding off Canada, not just because of the talent level, but because Bev Priestman seems to have a great knowledge of her players, a great understanding with her players too. Because if you think about Christine Sinclair, well, Sophie Schmidt, but also Christine Sinclair being the decorated player that she is, that's Canada's greatest player of all time. That's one of the greatest international women's players of all time. It would be easy for her to then, sulk a bit, sit on the bench. And for a competitive person like Christine Sinclair, like we know that Christine Sinclair is, it would be maybe easy for her to be spiteful about that. But Bev Priestman has such an open dialogue with her team and such trust in her players, and they trust her back to, put them in the right situation. Bev Priestman admitted after the match that she maybe would have went with a different starting lineup, but it takes bravery, to use her words back at her, to admit that, but then to also not be second guessing your decisions when you come out of halftime and you make such a drastic change in a match that is 1-1 at that point. So it would have been easy for her to see how the next 10 minutes looked, maybe make one adjustment and then make that wholesale change. But they make that wholesale change coming out of half, and they see the fruits of those labors, less than 10 minutes into the match resuming. And I think that's important. So now Canada go into their important match against Australia, but it's no longer a must win like it would have been if they drew this match or if they lost this match like it was looking in the early moments. Now they go into a match where they can win the group after what happened against Nigeria. It's something that I think, sometimes good teams need to struggle to be reminded what it takes to kind of perform at this level. You saw it with the Men's World Cup, like Argentina losing to Saudi Arabia in the way that they did. I think sometimes you need that punch in the mouth to be able to advance and be able to, play to your strengths, play to the best version of yourself. So Canada got that punch in the mouth for 3 halves, and they come out of it stronger for it. And you look at how much that team is kind of bonded together through adversity on the pitch and off the pitch. It's a team that is now looking more dangerous than they were coming into the tournament, I think. I think they're, they still have a ton of issues, but against an Australia team where it's up in the air of what Sam Kerr looks like, they haven't necessarily been forthright about if she's going to be ready to go for this game or not. It's interesting. It puts this group in a whole new perspective. So it'll be fun to see how that match turns out this weekend. And heading into the knockouts, we're getting some interesting final match days coming up. Of course, big matchup tonight as you're watching this, as I'm recording this, should say. Canada, or the US, the other Canada. No, that doesn't work. The US are facing off with the Netherlands, and what will be a fantastic matchup, a rematch of 2019. And really the US's first big test of this tournament. You look at how they performed against England and against Spain and against Germany in the build-up to the World Cup last year. You look at, since those losses, they put together 10 straight wins. They've been defensively stout, but still a lot of those same questions remain, especially since Julie Ertz. It's funny because we talked about how Julie Ertz was everything that this midfield needed, and then now she's playing at center back. So it kind of forces us to redraw that narrative a bit. That was my whole point, talking about Julie Ertz returning during the last round of friendlies, was that's exactly what the midfield needed. Of course, Becky Sauerbrun's injury throws a wrench into all of that. But midfield-wise, with Rose Lavelle and with Savannah DeMello as a very competent player to step in, Andy Sullivan looked much better last. Not that Andy Sullivan ever looks bad, but I think her flaws are sometimes highlighted in games where the U.S. have trouble going forward, and sometimes that midfield could be disjointed in ways. But I think they've sort of started to figure that out, at least in the small sample size we have over the last 3 or 4 games. But this is the real test, and if Rose Lavelle is ready to go, she's needed for a game like this, because these are the type of games that she can kind of take over in a way. But they also have Sophia Smith, who's in the form of a lifetime. That's a huge X factor for that club as well. So looking forward to that match tonight. Started off with a good one with Canada and Ireland in the morning today. So let me know what you thought of these matches last few days. I didn't get to talk about the Philippines, and they're just... I have so much love for that group. Obviously, shout out to Hallie Long, who grew up in the Lou Fuse Academy. here in the St. Louis area, in the Cape Girardeau area. So a lot of love for that club, and to see the emotion pouring out of that win, pouring out of after their first goal. I think that's been kind of my main take with the World Cup, is that every game has been pretty much fantastic, and you have these teams that not necessarily made unlikely runs, but are seeing, their first big run in the tournament, having these emotional moments with their first goals. And it just speaks to a bright future for the sport, and I feel very optimistic about that. Anyway, let me know what you thought about the round of games the past few days, about this Ireland-Canada game, and let me know what you think about Canada going forward. I think it's still a team that is confusing in a way. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. Please make sure you subscribe to Talkin' Soccer. Give me a thumbs up if you like talking soccer with me. Make sure you turn on those post notifications. I'm posting a couple of times today with the Leagues Cup stuff going on as well. And outside of that, folks, we'll talk very soon.